Ethan Cross had learned three important things during his 8 months on Haven's Rest. Orbital station coffee tasted like recycled despair. The artificial gravity had a slight delay in Sector 7 that made his stomach flip every morning. And his roommate Liara was possibly the quietest person in the entire galaxy. She moved through their cramped quarters like a whisper, worked the night shift in hydroponics, and their most extensive conversation to date had been about whether the temperature setting should be 21 or 22 degrees Celsius. They'd settled on 21.5 as a compromise, which pretty much summarized their entire relationship. The quarters were standard station issue, meaning 2 bedrooms barely large enough for a bed and a storage unit. One shared bathroom that had clearly been designed by someone who'd never actually used a bathroom, and a common area that could charitably be called cozy if you were feeling generous or claustrophobic if you were being honest. Ethan had the day shift maintaining the station's environmental systems. Liara had nights in the agricultural section, and they developed a comfortable routine of barely seeing each other, which is why he didn't expect her to be home when he returned early on a Tuesday. His shift cut short by a supervisor who'd taken pity on him after a 14-hour marathon fixing a malfunctioning air recycler in Sector 3. Ethan was covered in sweat, his uniform stuck to his back, and his brain was operating on the kind of autopilot that comes from pure exhaustion. He registered that Liara's door was open, which was unusual, but his door was also open, which meant she'd probably just left for her shift. The bathroom door was closed but not locked, which meant nothing because the lock had been broken for 2 months, and maintenance kept promising to fix it next week. He opened the door. Time did something strange, stretching like heated plastic. The bathroom was full of steam, smelling faintly of something floral he couldn't identify. Liara stood in the shower stall, and Ethan's exhausted brain took approximately 3 full seconds to process what he was seeing before the panic hit. She was turned slightly away, water running over skin that wasn't just skin. Patterns moved across her body like living art, bioluminescent traces that pulsed gently in shades of blue and violet, and something his eyes didn't have a name for. They ran along her spine in intricate spirals, spread across her shoulders like wings made of light, traced down her arms in geometric patterns that seemed to shift as he watched. Her proportions were subtly different from human, her waist longer, her limbs more graceful, and her skin itself seemed to shimmer with an inner light that had nothing to do with the bathroom fixtures. Her ears, elongated and swept back in elegant points, twitched slightly. She turned, and her eyes, those same silver eyes he'd seen across the dinner table for 8 months, went wide with shock. For one eternal moment, they simply stared at each other. Ethan saw surprise flash across her face, then something else, something that might have been vulnerability or fear. The patterns on her skin flared brighter, pulsing rapidly, and he understood with sudden clarity that they were reacting to her emotions. He started. Liara made a sound somewhere between a gasp and something in her own language that his translator didn't catch. Ethan stumbled backward, his shoulder hitting the doorframe hard enough to hurt. I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were. I thought you'd left for work. The door wasn't locked. He pulled the door shut with enough force to rattle the frame, then stood in the common area, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. Behind the door he heard water shut off, heard movement, heard what might have been Valith cursing but couldn't be sure. Liara, I'm really sorry, he called through the door, his voice cracking. I wasn't thinking. Long shift, I'm an idiot. Silence, then quietly, please go to your room. Ethan went to his room. He sat on his bed, staring at the wall, and tried very hard not to think about what he'd just seen. This failed completely. The image was burned into his brain with perfect clarity. The patterns, the light, the way her body moved like water, the shock in her eyes. He'd lived with her for 8 months and never known, never suspected. The Valith looked human enough in their clothes, similar enough that most people didn't think twice. But what he'd seen was something else entirely, something beautiful and alien and completely unexpected. He heard the bathroom door open, heard her footsteps move quickly to her room, heard her door close with a decisive click. Ethan put his head in his hands. This was bad. This was monumentally bad. They'd maintained a careful, polite distance for 8 months, and he just obliterated that boundary in the most embarrassing way possible. She probably thought he was some kind of pervert. She probably wanted to request a new roommate immediately. A knock on his door. Ethan jumped, nearly fell off his bed. Yes. We need to talk. Liara's voice was steady but quiet. When you are ready. I will be in the common area. He took a minute to compose himself, changed out of his work uniform into clean clothes, and tried to figure out what he could possibly say that would make this situation less mortifying. Nothing came to mind. Finally, he opened his door. Liara sat on the small couch they'd bought together from the station's second-hand exchange, wearing loose sleep clothes that covered her completely. Her silver hair, he'd always thought it was dyed, but now he wondered, was damp and pulled back. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, her silver eyes giving nothing away. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair opposite. Please. Ethan sat, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Liara, I can't apologize enough. I should have knocked. I should have checked. I wasn't thinking straight after the shift in. I know, she cut him off gently. I believe you. This was an accident. Still, I invaded your privacy. That's not okay. No, it is not. She folded her hands in her lap, and Ethan noticed they were trembling slightly. But what concerns me more is your reaction. Ethan blinked. My reaction? You stared. Her voice was very quiet. Before you apologized, before you ran, you stared, and your face. She trailed off, looking away. I need to know what you thought, what you think, of what you saw. This was somehow worse than the initial accident. Ethan felt heat rise to his face. I thought, he stopped, started again. I didn't know about the patterns, the light. I've never seen anything like it. That does not answer my question. He met her eyes, saw genuine worry there, and realized she was asking something specific. She wanted to know if he'd been disgusted, if he'd seen her as monstrous, if the secret she'd kept covered for 8 months had just cost her the only stable housing situation she had. I thought you were beautiful, Ethan said, the honesty coming out before he could stop it. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And then I thought I was the worst person in the galaxy for seeing something you clearly didn't want me to see. Liara's eyes widened fractionally. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to examine. You are not disgusted, she finally said, and it wasn't quite a question. No, God, no. Liara, he stopped himself before he said something even more inappropriate. No, not disgusted, the opposite of disgusted. She studied him for a long moment, and Ethan had the uncomfortable feeling she could see right through him. This complicates things. I know, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. A hint of something that might have been amusement crossed her face. You have said sorry approximately 7 times in the last 3 minutes. It is excessive, even by human standards. Sore, he caught himself. Right, I'll stop. We cannot pretend this did not happen. No, and we must continue living together, as neither of us can afford to break our housing contract. That's true. Liara stood, and Ethan found himself tracking the movement, wondering what patterns were hidden beneath her clothes, what other secrets her people kept. She seemed to sense his thoughts because her expression shifted into something complicated. I will show you, she said quietly. If you wish to understand, but not tonight. Tonight we both need rest and distance. Tomorrow, if you still want to know, ask me, and I will explain what you saw. She disappeared into her room before Ethan could respond, leaving him alone in the common area with a racing heart and a head full of questions. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled slowly past, and somewhere in the station's guts, recycled air hummed through vents, and Ethan Cross tried to figure out how everything had changed in the space of 3 seconds. He wasn't sure he'd sleep at all that night. But when he finally crawled into bed, his last thought before exhaustion claimed him was of patterns like living light, and silver eyes that might have held something more than surprise. Tomorrow, she'd said. Tomorrow he could ask. Tomorrow everything might change again. He wasn't sure if he was terrified or fascinated. Possibly both. The power fluctuation hit at 300 station time, which meant Ethan was deeply asleep when the lights died and the emergency klaxons started their aggressive beeping. He jolted awake, disoriented, and immediately cracked his shin on the bed frame while trying to stand. The pain brought clarity. Station emergency. Everyone shelter in place until the issue was resolved. It happened maybe twice a year, usually something to do with the solar array or a micrometeorite strike that required immediate hull repair. He fumbled for his emergency light, found it on the third try, and opened his door to the common area. The space was pitch black except for a soft blue glow coming from Liara's room. Her door was open, and she stood in the doorway, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was glowing. Not brightly, but unmistakably, the patterns he'd glimpsed in the bathroom now visible through her sleep clothes, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. Her face was illuminated from beneath, and her silver eyes reflected his emergency light like a cat's. "Power outage," she said unnecessarily. "Yeah, we should probably stay in the common area until it's resolved. Standard protocol." They moved into the shared space, and Ethan realized his emergency light was almost insulting next to her natural luminescence. He turned it off, and immediately the room was transformed. Liara's patterns provided enough light to see by, casting everything in shades of blue and violet. "I did not consider this," she said quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. "That you would see. I can turn the light back on." "No, it is fine. You have already seen worse." They sat at opposite ends of the couch, the awkwardness from the past 3 days settling between them like a physical barrier. Since the bathroom incident, they'd barely spoken, communicating through notes left on the counter and carefully timed exits and entrances. Ethan had been working up the courage to take her up on her offer to explain, but every time he saw her, his nerve failed. Now, trapped in the dark with her bioluminescence the only light source, there was nowhere to hide. "Your people glow in the dark," Ethan finally said, because the silence was becoming unbearable. "In low light conditions, yes. The patterns store energy during the day. It is evolutionary from before we had artificial light." Liara's voice was carefully neutral. Most Valith dim their patterns when living among other species. Cosmetic suppressants. "I usually apply them before leaving my room. But not tonight. I was asleep. I did not have time." Ethan watched the patterns shift and pulse, hypnotic in the darkness. "How do you dim them, the patterns?" "Chemical suppression. It is harmless but uncomfortable, like wearing a mask that is slightly too tight." She glanced at him, then away. "You are staring again." "Sorry, it's just they're moving, changing. They respond to emotion, heart rate, neurological activity." She sounded resigned. "It is why most Valith prefer the suppressants. We are not good at hiding what we feel." "What do the colors mean?" Liara was quiet for a long moment. "Are you asking what you think you are asking?" "I'm asking what the patterns mean. You said you'd explain if I wanted to understand." "That was before you saw me glow like a jellyfish in the dark." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. "You don't look like a jellyfish. You look like, I don't know, living art, like someone painted constellations on your skin." The patterns flared brighter for just a moment, and Liara made a soft sound that might have been surprise. When she spoke again, her voice was different, less guarded. "Blue is calm, baseline. What you see now is me trying very hard to remain composed. And the violet, stress, uncertainty, fear. You're afraid of me." "I am afraid of what you think of me." She turned to face him fully, and in the dim light her features were ethereal. "You said I was beautiful. You said it was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen. Did you mean that?" Ethan's heart rate picked up. "Yes." "Why was it beautiful?" "Yes." Humans have such specific standards of beauty, symmetry and proportion and ratios I do not understand. My body is not human. My proportions are wrong. My skin does this, she gestured at the glowing patterns, which must seem alien and strange. So why did you look at me like that? Like what? Like I was something precious. Her voice cracked slightly. I saw your face before you ran. I have been trying to understand that look for 3 days. Ethan took a breath, committed to honesty. I didn't know bodies could do that. Humans are just skin and bones and organs, nothing special. But you're like a living light show. The patterns were incredible and the way they moved, and your proportions aren't wrong, they're just different. Elegant. And yeah, alien, but alien doesn't mean not beautiful. He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated with his own inadequate words. I don't know how to explain it. You took my breath away. The patterns shifted, the violet fading, the blue intensifying, and something new appearing. Streaks of gold that spiraled along her arms. Liara stared at them like they'd betrayed her. What's gold? Ethan asked softly. I will not tell you that. Why not? Because it will make this more complicated than it already is. She stood abruptly, pacing to the viewport where stars provided the only external light. Her reflection in the glass glowed like a ghost. This is why I use the suppressants. This is why Valeth do not live with other species unless we must. We cannot hide. Maybe you shouldn't have to hide. You do not understand. She spun to face him, and the gold was spreading now, creeping up her neck across her collarbones. In my culture, being seen unclothed by someone outside your family is significant. Being seen bathing is more significant still. It is intimate in a way that humans do not practice. And your reaction, the way you looked at me, the fact that you saw beauty instead of strangeness. She stopped, visibly struggling. It means something to my people. It means compatibility. It means that I might feel something for you, Ethan finished quietly. The silence was deafening. Outside, the station's emergency systems hummed in the background, and somewhere distant, repair crews were probably working frantically to restore power. Inside their quarters, 2 people stared at each other across a divide that was suddenly much smaller. Do you? Liara asked, barely a whisper. Feel something? Ethan stood, moved closer, watching the gold pattern spread like sunrise across her skin. I've been trying not to. For 3 days, I've been trying to pretend that moment in the bathroom didn't change everything. But I can't stop thinking about you, about what I saw, about what it means that you trusted me enough to offer to explain. I did not trust you, I was testing you. Did I pass? You are still here. You are looking at me like I am not a freak. You called me beautiful twice now. The gold was bright enough now that it rivaled the blue, and Liara's voice shook. So yes, you passed. What does the gold mean, Liara? She closed her eyes. Attraction, desire, the beginning of what my people call the soul bright. It is the pattern of someone who is falling. Falling, Ethan repeated. Do not make me say it. He reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to move away. When she didn't, he touched one of the golden patterns on her arm. It flared bright under his fingers, and Liara gasped, her eyes flying open. They respond to touch, he asked. To your touch, yes. To intention, too, she swallowed hard. This is a very bad idea. Probably. We are roommates. We must live together, if this goes wrong. I know. I am not human. There are complications you cannot begin to imagine. I know that too. Then why are you still touching me? Ethan smiled, gentle and honest. Because you're still glowing gold. Because you haven't moved away. Because 3 days ago I saw something I can't unsee, and I don't want to. Because maybe this is complicated and maybe it won't work, but I'd like to try. Liara stared at him for a long moment, her patterns a riot of color now, blue and violet and gold all competing. Then slowly, she took his hand and placed it flat against the patterns on her forearm. They flared brilliant under his palm, and he felt warmth, a subtle vibration like electricity but gentler. This is what you do to me, she said quietly. This is what I have been hiding for 3 days. My body cannot lie. When you are near, I glow like a star, and everyone who sees me will know. Know what? That I am falling too. The power came back on with a sudden surge, floods lighting, displays humming to life. They both blinked in the sudden brightness, and Ethan realized he was still holding her arm, still touching patterns that had dimmed now that the lights were on but hadn't disappeared completely. Liara looked at where they touched, then back at his face and slowly smiled. I suppose we are doing this then, she said. I suppose we are. You still have so many questions. Hundreds. And I will answer them, but Ethan. Yeah. But next time, knock before entering the bathroom. Despite everything, they both laughed, and in that moment, the awkwardness that had defined their relationship for 8 months finally dissolved. What replaced it was uncertain and complicated and possibly disastrous. But as Liara's patterns glowed soft gold in the artificial light, Ethan thought maybe it was worth the risk. Outside their viewport, Haven's Rest continued its eternal orbit, and inside, two people began the delicate process of learning what it meant to be seen. The next 2 weeks transformed their quarters from a space they happened to share into something that felt like home. Liara stopped using the suppressants when they were alone together, and Ethan grew accustomed to the subtle light shows that accompanied her every mood. He learned that sharp flashes of red meant annoyance, usually when the recycled water took too long to heat up. That deep purple meant exhaustion, which happened after double shifts in hydroponics. That the soft green he'd seen a few times meant contentment, like when she curled up on the couch with tea and ancient Valith poetry that didn't translate well into standard but she read anyway. And the gold. There was always gold now when they were together, subtle but unmistakable, a constant reminder of feelings neither of them had quite put into words beyond that first confession. They fell into new routines. Ethan would finish his day's shift and return to find Liara awake, preparing for her night shift. They'd overlap for 2 hours, and those hours became precious. They cooked together, or rather, Liara cooked while Ethan provided commentary and occasionally managed not to burn whatever he was assigned. They watched old Earth films on the small screen, Liara fascinated by human storytelling conventions. They talked about everything: his childhood in Chicago, her upbringing on Velschendris, why humans were obsessed with putting cheese on everything, why Valith found the concept of snow both beautiful and terrifying. One evening, Ethan was fixing a stuck drawer in the kitchen when Liara emerged from her room wearing a loose tank top, her arms bare. The patterns on her skin were visible in the dim evening lighting, pulsing gently. She noticed him looking and smiled. You still stare, she said, but there was no accusation in it. Sorry, I'm still not used to it. Do you want to understand them better? She moved to the couch, curling up in a way that made the patterns on her arms more visible. You have been very patient, not asking too many questions, but I can see you wondering. But Ethan abandoned the drawer and joined her, careful to leave space between them. I don't want to push. You are not pushing, I am offering. She gestured at her arm. The patterns are not random. They tell a story, if you know how to read them. A story. My life, my family, significant moments. She traced a spiral pattern on her shoulder. This is my mother's line. It appeared when I was born, a genetic inheritance. This one, she touched a geometric design on her bicep, appeared during my ascension ceremony when I reached adulthood. This, a starburst pattern on her forearm, is from my first heartbreak. They change, new ones appear. But throughout our lives, yes. Major events leave marks. Some Valith have very complex patterns. Mine are relatively simple. I am young by my people's standards. How young? 32 of your years. I will live perhaps 300 if I am fortunate. She looked at him, something complicated in her expression. You will not. This is one of the complications I mentioned. But Ethan had considered this during the long hours of his shifts when his mind wandered. A human lifespan was a brief candle compared to Valith longevity, but he pushed the thought aside, focusing on the present. One problem at a time. Right now, I just want to know you. Liara's patterns flared gold and she smiled. The patterns also respond to emotion in real time. You have seen this. But there are subtleties. The intensity indicates the strength of the feeling. The speed of the pulse indicates arousal, not sexual necessarily, but stimulation. Excitement, fear, anticipation. So right now, Ethan gestured at the gold that was spreading across her skin. Right now I am attracted to you and trying to maintain composure. The gold is bright but controlled. If I were, she stopped, looked away. If I were more affected, it would be brighter, faster. What affects you? That is a dangerous question. I'm curious. Curiosity killed the human. That's not the saying. It should be. But she turned back to him and her expression was vulnerable. Touch affects me. Intention, proximity. Your scent, which is very human and very distracting. The way you look at me like I am something precious. All of this affects me. Ethan's heart rate picked up. Can I ask you something? You may ask, I may not answer. That day in the bathroom, you said being seen bathing is significant in your culture. What exactly does it mean? Liara was quiet for a long moment. It means trust, vulnerability. In Valith culture, we bathe in a meditative state. Our patterns are most active, most honest. We cannot hide what we feel. To allow someone to see you in that state is to let them see your soul, essentially. It is usually reserved for family or life partners. But I wasn't supposed to see. No, but you did. And your reaction, she took a breath. There is a belief among my people. If someone sees you in that vulnerable state and responds with reverence rather than lust or disgust, it indicates deep compatibility. Soul recognition. It is rare, even among my own people. You think we're soul compatible? Ethan asked softly. I think you saw me at my most vulnerable and called me beautiful. I think you have not once made me feel alien or strange. I think when you touch me, my patterns respond like they are coming home. She met his eyes. I think I am terrified of what that means. Can I touch you, the patterns? You have before. That was different, an accident. I'm asking permission now. Liara extended her arm, and Ethan noticed her hand was trembling slightly. He took her arm gently, cradling it like something precious, and traced one of the spiraling patterns with his fingertip. It flared brilliant under his touch and Liara's breath caught. Does it hurt? He asked immediately. No, it feels, she swallowed hard. It feels like connection, like you are touching more than just my skin. It is intimate in a way humans do not experience. He continued tracing the pattern, watching it pulse and brighten, watching other patterns on her shoulder and neck begin to glow in response. Is this okay? Yes, but Ethan. Yeah. If you keep doing that, the patterns will become brighter, more obvious, and I will not be able to hide what I am feeling. What are you feeling? Like I want you to keep touching me. Like I want to know what it feels like when you touch other patterns. Like I am falling faster than is wise or safe. The gold was brilliant now, racing across her skin like liquid light, and her pupils were dilated. Like I might be in trouble. Ethan moved closer, still holding her arm, watching the patterns dance under his fingers. Good trouble or bad trouble? I have not decided yet. He touched a pattern on her shoulder, and Liara made a soft sound that went straight through him. The pattern flared so bright it left afterimages, and suddenly her hand was on his chest, feeling his heartbeat through his shirt. You are affected too, she said, her voice low. Your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is shallow, you want this. Yes, even knowing the complications, the differences, especially knowing them. Liara, I don't want you despite being Valith. I want you because you're you, patterns and all. She leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his, her patterns illuminating both their faces in gold light. If we do this, there is no returning to what we were before, no pretending we are simply roommates. I know. My people will know. Your people will know. Everyone who sees my patterns when you are near will know. Let them know. You are very certain for a human who has known me only months. I'm certain that what I feel when I look at you is worth exploring. I'm certain that you glow like a star when I touch you, and I want to spend a very long time learning what makes each pattern bright. I'm certain that I haven't felt this way about anyone, human or otherwise, in my entire life. Liara's eyes searched his face, and whatever she found there made her decision. She closed the distance and kissed him, tentative and careful, her lips softer than he'd expected. Her patterns exploded in brightness, gold so intense it was almost white, spreading across every visible inch of her skin. Ethan felt her trembling, felt the subtle warmth of her patterns through his clothes where she pressed against him. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Liara laughed shakily. I am glowing like a sun. This is embarrassing. This is beautiful, you're beautiful. You keep saying that. I'll keep saying it until you believe me. She touched his face, her fingers cool against his skin. I am beginning to, which is dangerous. You make me feel seen, Ethan Cross. Truly seen. I did not expect this when they assigned me a human roommate. Neither did I, but I'm glad they did. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, Liara teaching him to read the smaller patterns on her hands and wrists, explaining the subtle variations in color and pulse. Ethan learned that the tiny cluster near her thumb appeared when she was 12 and first understood poetry, that the delicate lines on her wrist showed up after her best friend died, that every Valith carried their history on their skin, unable to hide their past or their present. When Liara finally left for her shift, her patterns still glowing gold, Ethan sat alone in their quarters and marveled at how completely his life had changed. A month ago, she was a quiet roommate he barely knew. Now she was someone he was falling for, someone whose every emotion he could read in the light beneath her skin. Outside the viewport, Haven's Rest continued its orbit, and Ethan thought about compatible souls and accidental moments, and how sometimes the most important things in life happened when you least expected them. He fell asleep that night thinking about golden light and soft kisses, and the sound of Liara's laughter, and he dreamed in colors he'd never seen before. The station's monthly social event was held in the main recreation hall, a space large enough to accommodate several hundred residents, and decorated with an enthusiasm that suggested the planning committee had access to supplies that definitely weren't regulation. Ethan hadn't planned to attend, but Liara had mentioned wanting to go, and somehow he'd found himself agreeing to accompany her. She emerged from her room wearing a dress he'd never seen before, deep blue fabric that complemented her silver hair and left her arms bare. Her patterns were visible, glowing softly even in the bright lighting, and Ethan noticed she wasn't wearing suppressants. You're not hiding them, he said. No, I am done hiding. She smiled at his expression. If we are doing this, truly doing this, then people will know. My patterns will tell them, so there is no point in pretending. They walked to the recreation hall together, and Ethan noticed the looks they got: curious, surprised, a few disapproving. But Liara held her head high, her hand in his, and the gold in her patterns was unmistakable. The hall was crowded, music playing from somewhere, people clustered in conversation groups. Ethan recognized some of his engineering colleagues and Liara's co-workers from hydroponics. They found drinks, something that claimed to be wine but tasted like synthesized grapes, and tried to blend into the background. This lasted approximately 15 minutes before Jake Morrison, one of Ethan's least favorite colleagues, spotted them. Jake was the kind of person who thought being loud made him interesting, and whose sense of humor existed somewhere between offensive and actively hostile. Cross, Jake shouted over the music, already drunk. Didn't know you were into aliens. Ethan felt Liara stiffen beside him. Jake, good to see you too. That your roommate, the one who never talks. Jake squinted at Liara, his gaze traveling down her body with an appreciation that made Ethan's jaw clench. Heard you Valith types are supposed to be wild. That true? That's inappropriate, Ethan said, his voice flat. What? I'm just curious. You're dating an alien man. That's gotta be weird, right? Do the ears do special things? Does she glow in bed? Liara's patterns flashed red, and Ethan saw genuine hurt flash across her face before she masked it. Something in him snapped. Jake, you have 3 seconds to walk away before I make you walk away. Oh, come on, I'm just joking. Can't you take a joke? Not about her, not ever about her. Ethan stepped forward, and he was distantly aware that people were watching now. Apologize. For what? Being curious. Everyone's thinking it, I'm just saying it. What's it like, Cross, dating something exotic? Bet she does tricks. Ethan didn't remember deciding to move. One moment he was standing still, the next his hand was fisted in Jake's collar, and he was pulling the larger man close. You will apologize to her right now, or I will personally ensure every woman on this station knows exactly what kind of person you are. Starting with your supervisor, who happens to be married to my supervisor. You want to test that theory? Jake's expression shifted from amused to nervous. All right, sorry. Didn't know you were serious about her. I am deadly serious. Now get out of my sight. Jake stumbled away, muttering, and Ethan turned to find Liara staring at him with wide eyes. Her patterns were a confused mix of red and gold, and something that might have been silver. You defended me, she said quietly. Of course I did, he was being a jackass. But you made a scene. People are watching. Your colleagues will know you are serious about me. Good, let them know. She touched his arm and her patterns flared bright gold. Ethan, you are shaking. He was, adrenaline and anger and protectiveness all fighting for dominance. I can't stand it when people treat you like you're less than human. You're not exotic. You're not a curiosity. You're just you, and you're worth more than Jake Morrison's entire existence. Come with me. She pulled him out of the hall, down a side corridor, into one of the observation rooms overlooking the planet below. The door closed behind them, muffling the music and conversation, and suddenly they were alone. That was very stupid, Liara said, but she was smiling. Probably. You could have been hurt. Jake is larger than you. Didn't care. You made it very public that we are together. Also didn't care. She moved closer, her patterns brilliant in the dimmed lighting. Why risk it? Why make your stance so clear? Because watching him look at you like that made me want to commit violence. Because you deserve better than being treated like a novelty. Because, he stopped, swallowed hard. Because I'm in love with you, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. The words hung in the air between them. Ethan hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even fully acknowledged them to himself until this moment. But watching Liara's face, seeing her patterns explode in gold so bright it was almost blinding, he knew it was true. You love me, she said, and her voice was shaking. Yes, I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But that moment in the bathroom when I saw you for the first time, really saw you, I think I started falling then. And every day since has just been falling further. Do you know what you are saying? What it means among my people to speak those words? I'm saying I want this, us. Whatever complications come with it. I'm saying I don't care that you're Valeth and I'm human. I'm saying that when I think about my future, you're in it, and I can't imagine it any other way. Liara's hands came up to frame his face, and her patterns were doing something he'd never seen before, pulsing in waves, gold and silver mixing, creating patterns within patterns. The silver, she whispered, do you see it? Yes. It means soul bond, recognition at the deepest level. I have only seen it once before on my parents. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you too, Ethan Cross. I have been trying not to. Trying to be practical and cautious, and protect myself from the inevitable pain when your short human life ends and mine continues. But I cannot help it. You saw me, truly saw me, and loved what you saw. How could I not fall? He kissed her then, pouring everything he felt into it. The love, the protectiveness, the desperate need to show her she was valued. Her patterns blazed like a supernova, and he felt the warmth of them through his clothes, felt her trembling against him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liara laughed through her tears. Everyone will know. The moment they see me, they will know what we have done. Let them know. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. I'm not ashamed of you. I'm proud to be with you, proud that you chose me. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Your patterns are telling a story. Let them read it. She pressed her forehead to his, and in the dim observation room, her bioluminescence was the only light they needed. This will not be easy. There will be opposition, questions about our future, concerns about compatibility, about children, about what happens when you age and I remain young. We'll figure it out together. You are very optimistic for someone dating an alien. I'm dating you. The alien part is just a bonus. She laughed again, and the sound was pure joy. I want to show you something. Will you come with me? Anywhere. They left the observation room, left the social event behind, and made their way to the hydroponics section where Liara worked. At this hour, it was deserted, just rows and rows of growing things under artificial sunlight. She led him to the back section, where experimental plants grew in isolated environments. This is my project, she said, gesturing to a small enclosure. Inside, delicate flowers grew in shades of blue and violet that seemed to glow. Lumina blooms, from Velschendris. I have been trying to make them grow in station conditions. They're beautiful, they look like your patterns. They respond to the same things: emotion, energy, connection. She opened the enclosure and touched one of the flowers. It brightened under her hand, and the others around it began to glow in response. Watch. She took Ethan's hand and placed it beside hers on the flower. The glow intensified, spreading through the entire plant, then to the neighboring plants, until the whole enclosure was bright with bioluminescent light. They recognize us, she said softly. The connection between us. Life responds to love, Ethan. It recognizes truth. He stared at the glowing flowers, then at Liara's glowing patterns, and felt something settle in his chest. This was real. This was right. All the complications and questions and concerns about the future, they mattered. But they didn't matter as much as this moment, standing in a garden of alien flowers with a woman who glowed like starlight. Move in with me, he said suddenly. I already live with you. No, I mean stop being my roommate, be my partner officially. Share my room, share everything. Liara's patterns pulsed so bright he had to blink. Are you proposing cohabitation? I'm proposing we stop pretending we're anything other than what we are. I love you. You love me. Let's stop maintaining separate spaces and just be together. This is a very human way of thinking. Is that a no? It is a yes. She pulled him close, and the flowers around them brightened in response to her joy. It is a yes to cohabitation and to love and to figuring out the future together. It is a yes to everything, Ethan Cross. They kissed, surrounded by glowing flowers, and Ethan thought about accidental moments and bathroom doors, and how sometimes the most important things happen when you least expected them. He'd walked into that bathroom exhausted and thoughtless, and walked out changed forever. Now, holding Liara close, watching her patterns dance with silver and gold, feeling the warmth of her against him, he couldn't imagine his life any other way. Outside the hydroponics bay, Haven's Rest continued its orbit. Inside, two people, human and Valeth, different in every way that mattered except the most important one, began the process of building a life together. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and questions and moments of doubt. But as Liara's patterns glowed